And welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show at Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. And on the web, you will find us at jimbotalk.net. You may not be aware of the fact that AmeriCore Week is underway from May 9th through the 16th, and it is a look at the whole notion of volunteerism around the country. It is certainly a celebration of local heroes and national pride, and in a country blessed with boundless natural resources, we perhaps lead the world in the number one resource, our citizenry. You can learn more about this, by the way, at AmeriCorps.gov, AmeriCorps.gov. Established in 1993, 16 years it's been now, as a way for Americans, particularly the young, to give back to their communities and to their country. We're joined by the Director of Volunteer Maryland, which partners nonprofit organizations in the state with citizens who dedicate a year of their lives to national service in AmeriCorps. Barbara Reynolds is with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a bit more, if you would, about this whole program. We'll start, I guess, with AmeriCorps Week and work our way back to AmeriCorps itself.
Sure, absolutely happy to. First of all, happy National AmeriCorps Week. This is the third observance of a national recognition event. What we're doing this week is really trying to shine the spotlight on all of the wonderful adults, as you said, a lot of them young adults who are serving their country around the United States. I have the privilege of working in Maryland with a number of AmeriCorps members who are doing all different kinds of service. The week includes a number of service projects around the country as well as actual recognition events. I know in Maryland we had a wonderful conference on Tuesday put on by our governor's office. We also had a number of our AmeriCorps members and staff participate in a playground build in Baltimore City. So around the country there are different kinds of events, just as I said, to really shine the spotlight on folks. We're also trying to take this as an opportunity to say thank you to all of the nonprofit organizations, the churches, the businesses, really all of the community partners that make our service possible. It's certainly the citizenry, as you said at the beginning, but also it's the support of the community around these individuals who are serving their countries.
Are we volunteering as we once did? Sometimes you have to wonder if the old virtues, and volunteerism would have to be one of those, are still extant. Do we still do this?
We do. I think that's a really that's an interesting question and a fun discussion to have. Because we have been studying volunteerism now for so many decades, we have a really good idea, definitely here in the U.S., and we're seeing it more and more around the world, that Americans do volunteer and continue to volunteer even in times that are tough economically, like right now. In fact, overwhelmingly what we're seeing in Maryland is that while finances are getting tighter, of course, for everyone, and that includes nonprofits, people are still coming out to volunteer. They're still bringing out their families. They're coming out on weekends. They're still giving their time, which is, of course, even more important, I think, right now.
Well, it is obviously important. You tend to think in hard times that people perhaps become a little more me-centered just because we have certain basic things that have to be attended to, not always just I, me. Sometimes my family, for example. I'm the breadwinner or this sort of thing. And therefore, things of this nature aimed outward at the community as a whole tend to be put on the very back burner.
Yes, I think there's a certain instinct. I agree absolutely with that. And interestingly, though, in the work that I do and the work that I see and support our AmeriCorps members doing, we really continue to see people's generosity even in these really tough times. I think there's something in our DNA as humans. I think we do want to connect with each other, and when things are tough, that sense of connection is still there. And it's something that really propels AmeriCorps. I mean, just the fact that these individuals are dedicating a whole year of their lives for very tiny, a very tiny living stipend, and working in some of the toughest communities that we have in this country. And year after year, we're seeing more and more people applying for these positions. So I think that's really a demonstration of how we are dedicated to service even in really tough times.
It sounds like a domestic Peace Corps. Would that be a fair description?
It would, actually. We've used that as a description a lot, and over the years, I think the Peace Corps has come to grips with it, with us saying that. What we have in common certainly is, the notion of folks giving themselves full time to service. We do have the great honor to work, for the most part, our AmeriCorps members are serving in the communities where they come from. They tend to be working right alongside people they grew up with, or that they went to school with, or that their families know. In some cases, people do move around, like the Peace Corps. They get to go to a different part of the country. We've had folks from Maryland head up to Alaska to serve as vistas. We've had folks from California come over to Baltimore and work with us. So there's a little bit of that travel as well. But the sense of giving yourself up full-time for service, that is for sure very much an alignment between the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps.
Barbara Reynolds is Director of Volunteer Maryland, and we're talking about this week that we are observing right now, National AmeriCorps Week, and it is May the 9th through the 16th. And we'll take a look at some of what these specific volunteer opportunities may be. Perhaps we have nudged the altruistic within you, and if so, we'll tell you how you can apply that when we come back. 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show. We're talking here tonight about volunteerism, about AmeriCorps, about this week, National AmeriCorps Week, the 9th through the 16th, with the Director of Volunteer Maryland, Barbara Reynolds. Let's say that somebody out there says, I'd like to do this kind of thing. I have the time and the resources. I can afford to do this. I'm serious about it. So if I go to AmeriCorps.gov and I sign up, what am I really getting myself into here?
Sure, that's a great question, and of course, my first response to that would be, yay! I'm very excited that you would be thinking about this and taking the time. There's a really wonderful online recruitment website. It is at AmeriCorps.gov that you mentioned before. Very, very easy to navigate. There's an online application, and folks who want to find out about any projects, all AmeriCorps projects that are registered on that website. There's simple sort criteria. You can check out part-time opportunities, full-time opportunities. There are AmeriCorps positions that last for a year. There are also shorter-term AmeriCorps positions that are just for the summer or for a semester of school. You can sort by your location. You can also sort by the kind of project that you might be interested in. AmeriCorps actually has 5 different national priority issue areas. And so if you're interested in environmental projects, you can go onto the website and sort by those. I know in Maryland we have a wonderful conservation corps that helps to protect the Chesapeake Bay. That's one example of an environmental project. We also have education programs, or the education issue area, public safety, human needs, and then homeland security as well. So you can sort through all of that. And as I said, the website has a really nice function that'll just easily take you to the different projects. And then through that one online application, you can electronically apply to as many projects as you want. And, depending on your time and your energy, from there you would have conversations with the individual projects about their requirements, their timelines, and all that stuff.
What would be a typical project?
Sorry.
What would be a typical project?
A typical project is hard to say. There's tremendous amount of diversity. I mean, we're talking about 75,000 individuals who are serving in AmeriCorps and about 3,000 different programs. So there is no real typical. I can tell you there's kind of an indoor typical maybe and an outdoor, but even that's going to be a little tough to characterize. The outdoor folks, I think, are on some level really the face of AmeriCorps. It's often the face I think you think of when you hear the term Peace Corps or the Civilian Conservation Corps from back in President Roosevelt's time. These are the individuals who are outdoors, blazing trails, maintaining public lands, as I said, protecting our Chesapeake Bay. So that's kind of a typical outdoor AmeriCorps project. The indoor projects can tend to be things, again, very familiar, like tutoring youth or working with senior citizens, providing services to shelters or to meal programs that serve low-income individuals. I know in our program, again, at Volunteer Maryland, all of our AmeriCorps members are serving, all of our Volunteer Maryland coordinators are serving in nonprofits as volunteer coordinators. So they themselves are responsible for going out and recruiting tutors and recruiting mentors, recruiting folks to help work in environmental projects. So I wish there were a typical position. I think that's one of the, for me, it's always been one of the real joys of AmeriCore is that it's so diverse. But I think if you're new to it, it can be a little tough to get your mind around.
Now, I'm pretty sure that anybody who enters the Peace Corps has to undergo a considerable amount of training, and of course, a lot of that is cultural sensitivity and mores and customs of very different societies. It might not be quite so necessary in this country, but if you, in fact, volunteer for AmeriCorps, do you undergo a boot camp of volunteerism, or do they just say, okay, your skills are A, B, and C, and you're going to Pittsburgh or what have you?
Yep. There's definitely an orientation and training for new AmeriCorps members. The way that orientation and training looks depends on the specific project. So obviously those outdoor AmeriCorps members I mentioned before have a lot more physical training, more of a physical boot camp that they would go through before they got deployed to their positions. Our indoor AmeriCorps program members will also go through training, just as you said, actually, to learn how to work in the nonprofit culture that they're going into, or into a school or a faith-based organization. In our program, we pull our AmeriCorps members into training for about 11 days before they get deployed. We do a number of different kinds of training content with them. The bulk of it really is around, it is what you said, it's volunteerism boot camp. It's how to be an effective volunteer manager, how to really work effectively with different communities. So the training is extensive and definitely meant to equip the AmeriCorps members with everything they need.
Would I tend to go?
Motivation.
Would I tend to go? I was going to say, would I tend to go a long distance? Let's say I live in, say, Rockville, Maryland, one of the suburbs of Washington. Might I be assigned to Maryland's eastern shore, or would I wind up in Alaska? I mean, or do you have a choice in that sort of thing?
Sure. Oh, no, you have the absolute choice. It's you as a person who is interested in AmeriCorps. The options are really your buffet. You decide. There are service opportunities. There are wonderful service opportunities on the Eastern Shore and in Alaska as well. But the choice for the program that you want to go into, that you're interested in going into, is entirely up to you. And as I said, we've worked with folks who've literally stepped out of their front door of the home they grew up in, walked down the street, and then served their community. As an AmeriCorps member, it's been that local. And then we've also worked with folks who have literally traveled up to Alaska or traveled from Alaska to come to Baltimore. So it's entirely the individual's choice.
All right, let's say that we look at it from the standpoint of the projects. I know not only do Americans volunteer to serve in the Peace Corps, to maintain that analogy, but there are countries that say, hey, we had great success with that last batch of Peace Corps volunteers. Send us some more. Are there projects within the country who come to AmeriCorps and say, we'd like some volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. That's again.
And if you're one of those, if you're one of those, would you just contact AmeriCorps? And how would you qualify? I mean, what types of organizations could in fact receive these volunteers?
Sure. It has to be a 501c3, a nonprofit organization, or a government organization. That's one of the eligibility criteria. It also has to be an organization that needs the kind of human or environmental help that AmeriCorps provides, and that would be the kind of help that falls into those issue areas I mentioned before. So if you're a nonprofit that serves a particular human need like housing or meal delivery, then your institution, your organization might be a good placement for AmeriCorps. So if that is the case and you're interested in finding out, that website you mentioned before as well is also a good place to go, the AmeriCorps.gov. There's a link on that website for organizations. And again, fairly easily, I think, it takes you through how to find out what projects are in your state, in your city, in your community, and then how to request AmeriCorps assistance from those projects. I know Volunteer Maryland is listed on there because every year we have to recruit new nonprofit partners for our AmeriCorps members, and that's one of the ways that we use to do it.
I would assume that there is something akin to Volunteer Maryland in the other states as well?
There's not actually. We are a rare bird, and I think, as far as I know, the only AmeriCorps program that does the type of volunteer management exclusively. So we've often joked about wanting to clone ourselves, and many people have volunteered to start Volunteer Hawaii, but sadly we have not been able to make that happen yet.
So, in other words, in lots of states, there's not that much active participation at the state and local level? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No. Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. It just looks different. The way Volunteer Maryland was set up under Governor Schaefer many years ago is just a unique program model, the way that we operate. Volunteerism and certainly civic engagement through AmeriCore is pervasive in every corner of the country. There are, as I said, about 3,000 different AmeriCore programs working with about 75,000 individuals, and Volunteer Maryland is just one of those programs.
More to come, 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. And we're talking about AmeriCore, and Barbara Reynolds is Director of Volunteer Maryland. Perhaps something out there may have reached out to you and said, I need to do something about this. We'll have more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show. We are talking with Barbara Reynolds, Director of Volunteer of Maryland, and we're doing so as regards to AmeriCore Week, which is underway the 9th through the 16th. How would you sum up the spirit of volunteerism right now? Are people doing so unconditionally? Are they demanding some kind of recompense? I mean, I might be willing to do all kinds of things, but I certainly couldn't let my family go without food on the table and the bills paid. What kind of compensation do you provide, and is that adequate to really get people volunteering?
Sure. Well, I think there are a couple of answers. The first question, the compensation for the AmeriCore members, definitely it's not a lot of money. I mean, that's one thing. The 75,000 individuals who do this every year are doing it because they have tremendous hearts. And also, as we've talked about, they have the circumstances in their lives that make this possible. The actual stipend, the living stipend for AmeriCore members varies, again, depending on program. For our AmeriCore program for full-time members, it's $13,000 for the year. That's $13,000, and that's it. They do receive health care coverage for the year that they serve. They also receive at the end of their year an education grant. Right now, it's about $4,700. And that's money that they can use to either put towards a student loan that they might have or to pay for future tuition. Mm-hmm. So in terms of compensation, it's not a lot of cash. It really, the AmeriCore service is all about the heart, and that's one of the reasons why we like to take this week, and we need to take this week every year to really recognize that service.
You know, if the government really wanted to jumpstart this, they could allow students to forgive part of their student loans in exchange for a year in AmeriCore. Your volunteerism would jump 200% overnight.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's the whole new public service loan forgiveness program, and I think we're still trying to come to grips with whether or not that program will count AmeriCore time. So that's definitely something I agree completely. If there's a way that we could get, a year or two of AmeriCore service to chop off some of that student loan debt, that would be huge. I would say on the other side of the question there, the compensation for people who are just volunteering in their communities locally, who are not serving as AmeriCore members, just like the AmeriCore members, I think people volunteer because they have huge hearts, but they also do volunteer for specific needs that they have for themselves. I mean, we see volunteers who want to learn a particular skill, so they'll volunteer at an agency so they can get a kind of training that's going to help them in their lives. Or they might be looking for a particular social experience. So again, they'll volunteer, to be with a particular team or a group of people because they want that social experience. I think that there's a real goodness, and it's absolutely okay for it to be a win-win situation, where the volunteer is getting something for him or herself as well.
Who tend to do this? Do you get a lot of retired people, a lot of very young? I would think people in their prime earning years would be less likely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, overall, in our program, interestingly, our average age is 35. So we really are, we're getting the right out of college crowd. That's one group, about a third of our group. We are getting the retired or recently retired folks. That's another third. And then the other third for our program is that middle-aged folks, my people, my generation, who are in the prime earning years. And what we see in that group is that it's folks who've maybe started down one career path but have decided that they would like to try another. And often that other path that they're looking at is social work or teaching or some aspect of the nonprofit world.
All right, we're going to wrap on that note. Stay on the line. We're going to wrap on that note. Stay on the line. We'll speak off air. Again, if you are curious, if we have piqued your interest, you should go to the website AmeriCore.gov, AmeriCorps.gov. Our guest is Barbara Reynolds of Volunteer Maryland. This is Westwood One. Well, goodness gracious sakes alive, and thank you for being with us here on the Jim Bohannon Show at Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626, and on the web, there we are at jimbotalk.net. Well, at jimbotalk.net, we have our poll, and we always like to have people just click on there, log on, click over there, and pick your various options, and let us know what you think in an unscientific little poll that we do. Last week, we asked you about whether or not there was an over-media hype of the flu outbreak, and asked you how closely you've been touched with the virus. 1% said you or an immediate family member got it. 1% knew somebody who got it. 7% had workplace or school closed. 91% unaffected. All right, so this week, many employers have had to take drastic steps to stay in business. We're curious, in what way have you been most affected? Your choices are: I lost my job, or I took a cut in pay, benefits, or hours, including going from full to part-time, or I have had my workload dramatically increase with no increase in pay, which of the various options ain't the worst of the lot, or I've been fortunate my working conditions have not changed. Just go to jimbotalk.net. Click on that poll. And coming up, we're going to be getting out and about and doing a few things that we look forward to doing from time to time. Coming up on June the 1st, we'll be in Chicago, the Radio Hall of Fame, the Board of Directors meeting. I'm not only a member of the Hall, but I'm also the Hair Club president, and I'm serving on their board now, so that'll be fun. We'll have picked the nominees for next year's induction, or this year's, actually next November's induction, and we'll let you know who they are and how you can vote as that information becomes available. We'll take part in the New Media Seminar in New York City, June the 5th and the 6th, Friday and Saturday. Always looking forward to that. Sean Hannity plays a big role in that. Neil Bork will probably be there, the host of various talk show hosts, and Michael Harrison of Talkers Magazine does such a great job in putting that together. All righty. We have some odds and ends of the news that we like to pass along to you, just because we like to pique your curiosity. For about an hour this past week, the Missouri State Capitol and the governor's mansion were without power after a snake crawled into an underground cable tunnel. Power was restored, the snake was not. Now, that sort of thing happens, I guess. Let's see here. Visitor to the Macerata, Italy hospital got a surprise when he bit into a cafeteria cheese and tomato sandwich and tasted something meaty. Meaty? Well, turns out he'd bitten into a lizard. The good news, the cafeteria isn't charging him extra. Yeah, he's suing. Of course, you know he's suing. In Findlay, Ohio, Tyler Frost has been suspended from Heritage Christian High School for attending the prom at Findlay High School. Tyler's girlfriend goes to Findlay High. But no matter, Tyler gets an incomplete in all remaining assignments, and although he does get his diploma, he'll be banned from graduation ceremonies for breaking Heritage Christian rules about hand-holding, rock music, and dancing. Heaven forbid. You might want to think about changing schools, frankly, Tyler, in my humble opinion. Anyway, for what it's worth. In Detroit, County Judge Wade McCree has an unusual but often appropriate sentence for deadbeat dads. Watching episodes of Maury. That's the sentence. They got to watch Maury Povich. In Norway, drunk driving fines are based on one's income and personal wealth, so even though he only drove 400 yards, this man, worth an estimated $37 million, will have to pay a fine of $109,000. Whoa! For driving 400 yards drunk. We could figure out that, I guess, per inch. But although, that seems highly exorbitant, but I must say that I find a lot of merit in the notion of fines that reflect your ability to pay. I mean, if somebody sticks me with a $500 fine, I would not be happy about it, but I could pay it. For some people, $500 might as well be $1 million. And certainly if you're Ross Perot or Jay Rockefeller, a fine of $500,000 wouldn't be that big a deal. There is something, since fines are supposed to deter behavior, there is something to be said, I believe, about fines that, at least in part, reflect one's ability to pay. $109,000 for drunk driving is a little steep. Joe Donette of Central Virginia got laid off by his home building company back in January. He's been out of work ever since. However, Joe is not too worried about that right now after picking up $75.6 million in the Mega Millions lottery. Out of work? Hey, hurt me. Coming up on the Bohannon Show on this coming Monday evening, Chris Matthews of MSNBC, the host of Hardball, will be here to talk about the Hardball Handbook. He'll join us in studio, and we'll look forward. Always good to see Chris. I enjoy talking to him. Coming up on Tuesday night, Amy Grant is going to be with us in the first hour of the program. One of the great singers of our time. I've enjoyed her very much. Craig Shoemaker, the comedian, not sure exactly when he's going to be here. We have him down tentatively for Thursday, May the 21st in our second hour. That may change, but we will have Craig Shoemaker on this program. Very funny man. If you don't know Craig, he's the guy who does the Love Master routine. Funny dude. All right. On Friday, May the 22nd, Annabelle Gurwitch will be rejoining us. A lady who wrote about getting fired. We'll look forward to that. So just a few of the folks that are coming up here on the Bohannon Show in the next few days, hereabouts. We'll take a quick break, and we've got more to come on the Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. When we come back, a notion about crime and punishment after these messages. All right, welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Oh, the staff figured it out. If you drive 400 yards drunk and you're fined $109,000, that comes to $7.57 an inch. Okay. On the other hand, my guess is that even a person worth $37 million will think twice about driving drunk again. So there is a deterrent effect to consider there. Well, as regards the issue of crime and punishment, the Supreme Court is taking up a very serious question. As Barry Bagnatto reports, should juveniles serve life sentences without parole for really heinous crimes?
A teenager just shy of 17 brutally murdered Jennifer Bishop Jenkins' sister and brother-in-law and their unborn child. It prompted her to help found a victims group that opposes an outright ban on juvenile sentences of life without parole.
If you've got a 17-year-old who's killed multiple people in a pre-planned, calculated fashion, he should be serving that life sentence.
David Fauti at Human Rights Watch says the U.S. is the only country in the world that essentially sentences juveniles to die in prison.
Children are different from adults. This is something that the U.S. Supreme Court recognized just 4 years ago when it ruled that children cannot be subjected to the death penalty.
I'm Barry Bagnatto in Washington.
Interesting thoughts there. Just what is the extent of punishment that we should send to people who are defined as juveniles? You know, if the crime is nasty enough, you have to wonder the extent to which we indulge in the fantasy of trying to rehabilitate people. To what extent Are we really able to do that? I'm not sure that we've got that down to a science. If you really had something you could clamp on people's heads and you threw a switch and the little wheels turned and the lights blinked and people came out and they have absolutely changed their ways, well then, hey, no questions asked. But in the case of something like this, and the person is 17, barely a juvenile. So now we're into the area of drawing lines, arbitrary lines, but necessary lines, along what is obviously a continuum. I mean, people, of course, don't automatically, at the age of 18, suddenly acquire the wisdom to vote, but they don't have yet the wisdom to drink for 3 years. Of course, the year before, I think it's 17, they automatically suddenly acquire the maturity to serve in the military. And the year before that, they were suddenly automatically wise enough to drive a vehicle. Society clearly has to draw certain lines. I understand that, even though, of course, the reality is that there are some kids that are probably mentally mature enough at the age of 11 to drive a car, and some of them may be physically mature enough they could pull it off. Other people who are 41 and shouldn't be allowed anywhere behind the wheel of a car. So the age requirements are obviously arbitrary. Society has to do that. You just can't test everybody on whether or not they can drive at a certain age. There have to be certain lines drawn. But in the case of lines drawn as regards heinous crimes, now in this case that Barry Bagnetto reported about, the 17-year-old, we wouldn't be talking about this, wouldn't even blink an eye about this if the person was 27 or 37. This is an entirely age-related thing. Are we throwing away a life that has potential? And do we define potential merely as how many years the actuarial tables say they will probably live? Or is it potential based on what they have shown so far of their willingness and ability to make out of their lives? 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626. Should juveniles serve life sentences without parole for heinous crimes? We've already seen our reluctance to use capital punishment in the case of the young. This would seem, in some cases, to be the only alternative. Or are we just to automatically say, well, kids will be kids? It's a little tough, I think, to go along with that. For whatever reason, kids grow up a lot sooner these days. Kids achieve sexual maturity a lot earlier. Girls have the onset of their period now many years younger than just a generation ago. Whether that's something dietary or what, I'm not really sure, but it is a demonstrable fact. Young boys, the same thing. Whether it is permissive societies or just exactly what's at work here, the actions of the young also have tended to move forward beyond what once would have been considered likely to occur at a given age. There was a time when such an action by a 17-year-old would have been a nationwide scandal. Today we shrug our shoulders. Another kid committed a heinous murder. I personally have to think that life sentences without parole, if you have already thrown out the notion of the death penalty, is the only option. Society has to be protected first and foremost. If you commit such crimes, then you automatically enter the realm of the first consideration being whether or not we can be protected from you. I am at this point a lot less concerned about your potential. My guess is that you're probably not going to win the Nobel Peace Prize. The odds are you will probably not find a cure for cancer. I don't believe we are wasting a whole heck of a lot of potential here to begin with. At best, we might hope that you could be a productive citizen. 1-866-50-JIMBO on the Bohannon Show. Robert in Kenton, Tennessee, your thoughts?
Yes, sir. I actually, there was, I believe a few years ago, there was a 12 or 13-year-old boy who did some wrestling moves that killed a 5-year-old girl, and apparently during all that, he did it repeatedly, even after she was dead, and I believe even he was sentenced to life in prison, and a girl that I was dating at the time, we got in quite an argument over that because she believed that it was just, and you know, I
Well, that was a little different, if I'm not mistaken. For one thing, I think wasn't the kid somewhat retarded, or whatever is the politically correct term these days, and somewhat younger, and had some problem understanding of what he had done?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And you know, that's kind of where I think where it needs to be. You know, if you know they see a psychiatrist or whatever professional, and they're deemed completely mature and know what they're doing and things of that nature. You know, obviously they knew what they were doing, whether it be an anger issue or whatever. You know, they were completely aware of the crime they were committing. However, if there's some kind of slowness and you know, just a complete disconnect from reality, then I think it's more of maybe a reform issue that we need to look at, rather than just, you know, throw them in a jail cell and let them rot away.
Well, in your circumstance that you brought up here, I could see what you're talking about. I'm not sure I would automatically go along with you, but I agree that a case-by-case judgment would have to be made. In the case of the young man in question, I recall having ambivalent thoughts about that. In this particular case, though, I mean, you said in this case it would be obvious, but it isn't obvious, obviously, to a lot of people out there. There are any number of people who seems to think that this particular 17-year-old, I mean, it's a court battle, and it got to the Supreme Court, so there are people on the other side of the question who seem to think that this kind of heinous murder by somebody who knew exactly what he was doing should still raise the question of whether or not we lock him up and throw away the key. So, to me, I don't think it's any question either. But there are those who feel that way. There are those who would subject the rest of us to danger over some kind of short-sighted sense of, well, frankly, desperately seeking moral superiority. It's too bad that punks like this, if in fact they are not incarcerated forever, if upon release they can't be moved next door to the people who got them out. Now we would be talking some justice. I would watch that and, frankly, enjoy it.
Absolutely, and you know, I think sometimes, like you were talking about with numbers are arbitrary. You know, you know, it's more of a maturity level, as you said. You know, there are kids that graduate high school at 14. You know, and obviously that person is more mentally capable of handling, you know, certain things than even his own classmates at the same age. You know, so you can't go by numbers. You can't let numbers get you soft and make you go, aw. You know, you got to really stop and look at, okay, what kind of person is this, regardless of their age.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I really do, Robert. I think good thoughts there. Let's go to Laura in Reading, Pennsylvania. Good evening.
Oh, my, that was so quick.
Well, I'm glad we got you on.
I just happened to pick up the radio because the Phillies game lasted until like 11:30. It was 12 innings, and then your show came on. I mean, I was just thinking as an alternative to death, but even those death sentences, by the time they do it, they're, you know, it lasts like 10 years or 20 years.
Well, the appeals process, that's a whole different topic, but the whole notion that there's the inherent lengthy time leading up to the death penalty, no, there's nothing inherent about that. We have chosen to make it an appeals process that has nothing to do with the merits of the case or the crime. We have just made it into a legal marathon run that does nothing but fatten the pockets of lawyers and very possibly raise the real question of whether or not sitting that long on death row is cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, I mean, once you've determined the case, there's no point in dragging it out forever. If a person meets the standards for capital punishment, he was convicted of that, and he was given that as a sentence, then execute the SOB.
I was thinking of lobotomies.
Lobotomy?
Yeah, they could do lobotomies. Like they used to do with the mental patients.
They did used to do that, actually, which I think does go into the realm of genuine cruel and unusual punishment. Lobotomies, actually, to be really honest, are not all that they were cracked up to be. They didn't cure anything, certainly in terms of mental health. It simply wound up mutilating people. I'd have to kind of, I think, leave lobotomies out of my equation, honestly, Laura. But, hey, in any event, we'll see what the court has to say about this. I'll be very curious to see just exactly where they go with this. 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626 on the Jim Bohannon Show. And coming up, just a few minutes, we'll take our look at what's in the world of Mighty John's Money Music Minute. Tell you what's coming up on Face the Nation this Sunday morning, and a very special interview. Del Curry. If you've not heard of him before, then I hope that you will remember him now. A very talented fellow. All right? More to come. This is the Jim Bohannon Show. We come to you weeknights here at Westwood One. Coming up this Sunday morning on CBS News' Face the Nation with Chief CBS Washington News correspondent Bob Schieffer. A look at military tribunals, detainee photos, and interrogation memos. Guests will include the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, Anthony Romero, and Republican Congressman Peter King of New York, the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee. Plus, there'll be a roundtable on the Supreme Court. All coming up on Face the Nation on this Sunday morning. Interesting story here I found. You're sitting there at home like Mark and Zoe Ryder of Britain when a cow breaks into your backyard and jumps in your swimming pool. Don't you hate when that happens? Yeah, me too. Well, anyway, Mark tried a little, here cow, but that didn't do any good. And finally, an emergency crew was called. By then, the cow had walked out of the shallow end of the pool by itself. Oh, and no cows were harmed in the making of this story. We thought that you should know that. In Tyler, Texas, people in a mobile home park complained about low water pressure. A check revealed an unauthorized hose which led into nearby woods and right to over 2,300 marijuana plants. How do you make a pot bust in Tyler, Texas? Why, you just go with the flow, obviously. All righty. More to come on the Jim Bohannon Show. Leading off right now with just a tad early tonight, our check-in with Mighty John Marshall and his Money Music Minute.
Hi, everyone. This is Mighty John, the record guy, with a Money Music Minute. During their first appearance in the U.S. on The Ed Sullivan Show, the Rolling Stones sang "Time Is on My Side," after which Sullivan declared he would never have them back. Ratings soon changed his mind. What's a copy of "Time Is on My Side" worth today? The answer right after this.
And once again, Mighty John Marshall.
"Time Is on My Side" was the Rolling Stones' first top 10 hit in the U.S. It exemplified the slow, bluesy sound of many hits to follow. Released on London Records in 1964, the 45 with its picture sleeve is currently worth up to $200. You can find the value of any record at moneymusic.com.
That's a pity to see when the land of the free turns out to be nothing but a free for all. If you got big dough, you're freer than most, cause your freedom goes up with the size of your bag of roll. Now you can buy a judge or a bribe or a thug or a bomb or a shredding machine. You can buy your way through into known to any ticket or TV screen. It's a money disease, a thing called greed. And if you don't know, you need the money most in Moneyland. Oh, and it's so funny if you got the money in Moneyland.
Now that is a great sound, and it is a sound you'll be hearing a great deal coming up on something called Del Fest. That is Memorial Day weekend, the 22nd to the 24th, at the Allegheny County Fairgrounds in Cumberland, Maryland. Attention all of you listening to AM 1270 WCBC in Cumberland. And we are talking right now with actually the McCoury portion of the Del McCoury Band, and that would be Del, the father and guitarist, and also son Ronnie on mandolin and Rob on banjo. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be here. Yeah.
What is Del Fest, Del?
That is a festival.
This is sort of like a Roots Woodstock. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, you're probably kind of right about that. I swear. We've got like a mixture of music, you know. We've got bluegrass nationally. We've got some of the hardcore bluegrass bands there, and also jam bands. And these boys will have to help me with some of the other ones that we've got. It's a mixture of blues. There's blues, jazz, whatever. We've got it.
Very eclectic, Jim. Very eclectic.
Now, we are talking here, I gather, about, Ronnie, about a resurgence in love of bluegrass and all of the roots music, which is to say not something artificial that was thought up in some highfalutin record producer's office and amplified by 1,000 amplifiers. This is the stuff that real people play.
That's right. You're absolutely right, Jim. Yeah, this is something that people can sit on their back porch and play, but it's a little more refined than that, though. The musicians that are there.
Well, I must say that I have. You guys are really good. I mean, we should probably go over some of the accolades here. That your songs, Adele, has written and been recorded by Dierks Bentley, Alison Krauss, Union Station, countless bluegrass bands. You've been a Grand Ole Opry member since '03. Is that right? Don?
'03, yeah.
That is
I had to wait a long time.
You are your band. You are the most awarded act in the history of bluegrass. That's what I'm told.
What they tell me. Yeah. You know, sometimes you don't hear right things.
That's pretty impressive. You know, I gotta really ask you, Rob, have you ever thought about just selling out and just going really commercial? I mean,
I'm cut out for that. I enjoy playing this music that we play together. You know, it is a, you know. It's bluegrass. You know, some folks kind of make fun of bluegrass, but it's very refined. When you hear good bluegrass, that's hard to play.
It's very hard to play, and it requires
it's a pleasure to play when it's right.
Great ability. Banjo. The people always make. My father played banjo, and I know banjo. The people always make. My father played banjo, and I know about people always making jokes about banjo. Would you care to defend the banjo here and now?
The people that make fun of the banjo, they just have no idea how hard it is to play one. It's the hardest instrument there is to play. Everybody knows that.
I think it is. I mean, although, of course, I know one of those jokes. You know, what's the best sound you can make off a banjo? When it goes clunk at the bottom of a dumpster. I'm sure you've heard that one. Okay, yeah. The mandolin. Ronnie, what exactly is a mandolin? It looks like kind of like an anorexic little guitar in a way. What exactly is a mandolin?
Yeah, I've heard that before too, Jim. It's you know, I guess it originated in Europe. And it's basically it's based after the violin. It's the same tuning, and
but you pluck it instead of bowing it.
Exactly.
I see.
And it's probably older than the violin. It's probably from the lute family, which is.
Well, that's then because you got Alan Bartram over here on the bass, and they do both with the bass. They pluck the bass, they pick the bass, boom, 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 or they can in the big orchestra string the bass. I wonder how come that, for example, has anyone ever tried to string the guitar that you know of, Del? Exactly, a boa. You know, it could be done. I suppose.
I tried it. It didn't work.
Didn't work out too well.
He'd have to have a strong bow.
I reckon you would.
Yeah.
Del, all these years on the road, does it ever get old?
Not really. No, you know, probably the hardest part is the traveling, but, you know, I think it takes a certain person to be a traveling musician or a road musician, you know. It's not cut out for everybody. Yeah. But I always liked the road, you know, I like to travel, and so the combination of playing music and traveling, they kind of go together, you know.
Well, he's a guitar picking, bluegrass singing, never grow up boy. It says so.
Yeah.
Right here on the cover of a wonderful collection here of CDs celebrating 50 years of Del McCoury. That's very impressive. How does one get it? There are 5 discs on here. My goodness. And
yeah, it goes back
50 songs.
Yeah, I did like 10 from the 60s that I used to play with Bill Monroe way back, and I did a couple songs that I did on the road shows with him. You know that I sang solo, and so we did 10 from that, and then 10 from the 70s, right on up till each decade. You know.
You tend to think of this music as being the venerable music of yesteryear, but in point of fact, people like you are still writing today. Bluegrass is historic, to be sure, but it's also very alive and vibrant. I mean,
it is. Yeah. You know, a lot of writers in Nashville. You know, a lot of songwriters. We get a lot of our material from the writers in Nashville because if they find out you're going to do a record, man, they just flock, you know, and bring songs, which is natural, you know. A songwriter likes for his songs to be sung on the road, you know, and recorded, and that's great.
And I note here, if you go to Delfest, DELFEST.com, why, it tells all about this festival that's coming up, which is, again, May 22nd to the 24th. That is the Memorial Day weekend, Friday through Sunday, at the Allegheny County Fairgrounds in Cumberland, Maryland. Beautiful part of the state, by the way, up in the mountain area there.
Really?
And also, there is a place here that says store. You click on that, and I guess you can get a copy, right, of the 5 CD set here.
Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
You sure can.
I'm curious about the boys here, Rob and Ronnie. Sometimes kids rebel. You know, their father can do the most wonderful thing in the world, but the kid wants no part of it. Were you encouraged heavily, or was it left up to you whether you were going to be bluegrass musicians?
Oh, it was left up to us. I mean, one thing that I can say, Dad never pushed us. I don't think he ever asked us to practice. And so, you know...
I wish I had.
I heard you play. You practiced plenty. Okay.
But, you know, it was, you know, we saw how much fun he had on stage, probably, as kids. And we just had the want, I guess, to do it, you know. It's kind of... I mean, we picked up different instruments, but, you know, from what he played. But I guess it was just kind of out of necessity for one thing. But we really enjoyed it, you know.
So you all have your specialty instrument, of course. My guess is that every one of you can play at least one other, probably, and maybe more than that. I mean, it sort of goes with the territory, right?
Yeah.
I don't like to hear me playing the fiddle.
Have you ever, like on April Fool's Day, just switched instruments? Probably not. No, people pay their money for their tickets.
That's right.
You don't need a trombone, do you? No.
Hey, we might. Yeah, we'll look into that.
I don't think so. Well, now, I'm curious, Rob, which is more enjoyable to you, a live performance with the reaction of the audience, but of course all the imperfections that automatically come, or the perfection you can get in the studio where you can record it 28 times to get it just perfect? Which is more satisfying to you as a musician or a performer?
I would rather be playing live.
Is that right?
I like playing in the studio too. I mean, it's great. It's a controlled environment, you know. So, but on stage, you just never know what's going to happen, and it's more exciting, you know. And plus, you got the crowd and the reaction of the folks and all that, you know.
Well, things do happen on stage. There's no question about that. Do you recall, Del, over your 50 years as a professional musician? I know you've got memories galore. You remember the strangest, weirdest, and/or funniest thing, just whichever category comes to mind, that you can recall happening on stage?
On stage?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I could just recall something. My brother Jerry used to play in my band with me, you know, and we did duets together. He was a bass player, and you know, the bass has a fingerboard that comes down, and then where the from there down, I'm pointing now, and the folks out in Radio Land won't know what I'm
just
pointing
adjust the color tint on your radio.
True. Anyway, I broke a G string on the guitar, and at the same time, my brother broke his fingerboard off the bass. At the same time, we both were out of commission.
That would do it. That would do it. That's
and it fell on the floor. From what would it be, about a quarter of the fingerboard? About a quarter of it.
You must have been flicking away pretty hard there. That's a solid piece of wood there. My goodness. That's about as bad as the time that I was marching in a marching band with my trombone and got too close to the drum majorettes, and one of them machine gunned that thing off my slide. Bing, 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 bing. The rest of the parade, I mean, I was stuck. I just pulled it up and held it there. I couldn't play anything but the notes on that one position. Now,
Jim, we did play a rock and roll festival called Bonnaroo.
Did you?
And it's a big festival. It's in Tennessee, and right in the front row was somebody that Dad didn't really recognize this, but it was a girl who had a painted on shirt.
A painted, you know, some of those are pretty realistic. You can't realize, but about this time you're picking along and you realize that's skin. Now there, gentlemen, there is a test of musicianship. If you can remember two chords after that, I say that that's a professional musician.
Yeah, Jason said we started playing real fast.
Yeah. That'll get your attention. Yeah. Yes, that's true. I went to Delfest, and all I didn't get was this lousy T-shirt. So, okay. But by the way, you can get all kinds of stuff. Like you can get T-shirts, you can get all kinds of stuff at the Delfest.com store here. Let's talk about something that I think is a serious thing, and it bothers me. Maybe there's less of it. I don't know. Maybe there's just as much. But that is music snobbery, Del. There are just a lot of people out there that just put their nose up in the air at the thought of bluegrass music. What would you say to people like that, other than the fact that they're missing a lot of very enjoyable time?
Yes, that's true. You know, all they have to do is listen. You know, I mean, just sit down and listen for a little while. You know, it's a great art form, but at the same time, you know, we've got fans and listeners that the whole spectrum, you know, like from doctors and lawyers down to farmers and just whatever,
That's
you know,
right.
and young people, old people. And we have a wide spectrum of fans, you know, really do. I think probably more than any music. I really think that.
I would think so. It really does. But there are probably, again, that goes back to the snobbery. There are probably closet bluegrass fans out there, you know. That by day, they sip their white wine.
And play banjos.
And at night, when nobody is, when they've soundproofed the garage and they're out there picking up a storm.
Yeah.
It's probably true. But now this, celebrating 50 years of Del McCoury, 50 years, 50 songs, one legacy. How much of it is new stuff, Del? How much of it is the traditional older cuts that maybe have been reprocessed or whatever they do?
Well, they're all, every one of them, we recut them. In other words, the re-record restrictions were out on things that I had recorded years ago, you know, and so we re-recorded them in the studio. I think it was 35 of them. Then the last 15, we recorded ourselves in the last few years on our own label. So, you know, they're all, none of them are, what would you say? They're all
re-releases or anything.
Yeah, there's no re-releases. They're all, except for the
15,
except for the 15, the later ones, you know, some of the, like in the 2000s, you know.
By the way, I have been informed of a listener discount. If you go to delfest.com, DELFEST.com, I can see that Del's eyebrows are rising here. He may not be aware of this, but I am told that when you order tickets, use the keyword DelFest for a discount. So you can go to delfest.com, and when you order tickets, use the keyword DelFest, DELFEST, for a discount. This is the second annual DelFest at the Allegheny County Fairgrounds in Cumberland, Maryland. And, of course, all of you who listen to WCBC AM 1270, well, it's right on your back step. And for the rest of you, a little travel may be in order, but it's not that difficult to reach, and a beautiful part of the country, I might add.
Really? It's really a beautiful place. The Allegheny County Fairgrounds are, you know.
Yeah.
You've been there, and it's got the Potomac River going around that side, and then that's West Virginia right there. You can look at it. It's straight up.
And it is straight up. Actually, if West Virginia were actually put under a good flat iron, it would be the size of Texas.
Yeah, at least that
people don't realize that. Well, gentlemen, we are flat out of time, but I want to thank you very, very much. And again, I urge everyone to go to the website delfest.com, DELFEST.com. You can learn all about this wonderful new CD package they've got out of 5 CDs celebrating 50 years of Del McCoury. You can get tickets to go see Del Fest, which again is going to be May 22nd to the 24th at the Allegheny County Fairgrounds in Cumberland, Maryland, and there is a listener discount. You go to delfest.com. When you order tickets, use keyword DelFest for a discount. Gentlemen, you guys are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for having us in here.
Great guys. We do appreciate their presence. We'll take a quick break. We have got more to come here on the Jim Bohannon Show. Stay with us.
Excuse me, madam. You're standing still in a no parking zone. If you don't get a move on that body, I'll be forced to give you a ticket. So,
Mercy. The International Parking Institute begins its convention in Denver this Sunday.
We have a conference that is full of seminars and workshops. A big part of it is a trade show where we'll bring in close to 200 exhibitors.
For about 1,600 conventioneers, down from 2,500 last year, says IPI Executive Director Sean Conrad. When they aren't off doing conventioneer fun stuff, they'll be sampling the new parking technology.
We have now a real movement towards license plate inventory and recognition programs. The enforcement officers themselves are using handheld devices, which are all computerized. Those radio frequency identification systems that you see on the highway are also being used now in the parking industry.
See what you can learn on this show? Learn more at the website parking.org. And for those of us who are tired of getting nickeled and dimed by meter maids who catch us 30 seconds before we've dashed out to feed the meter,
we have a system now that you can pay by mobile phone. When you park at a spot, you just dial in a number. And if you run over time and you can't get back to that parking spot, you can increase your fare for however long you're going to be there.
What city would ever let that happen? They get too much cash from ripping off the parking public. As for the conventioneers themselves, they have ample parking should you be driving an ample.
However you're going to arrive in Denver, whether it's at the airport or the public areas, the municipality, or even the convention center, every one of those individuals is a member of ours at IPI. So if you have any problems, you let us know.
However, mostly the parking conventioneers will be within walking distance.
The way this property is situated in the Colorado Convention Center is that our host properties are right there on spot, so people will be walking. They'll get a lot of exercise while they're out there.
If there's any justice in the world, every seat in their auditorium will have a parking meter next to it. All righty, that wraps up the Bohannon Show tonight. Chris Matthews of MSNBC's Hardball will be on the program on Monday night, so join us at that time. Thanks to our producer and webmaster, Mr. Paul Hill. We're at JimboTalk.net. Be sure to click on the JimboTalk.net poll. Our engineer is Zach Akey. I'm Jim Bohannon. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is Westwood One. It's a bad thing.